Well, I think the themes in this exhibition are still really relevant today. Marilyn went from a very troubled and difficult childhood from nothing and built herself up to a media empire, the most famous person in the world.
August 5th, 1962, 3:30 in the morning. The most famous woman in the world was found dead in her bedroom. For over 60 years, they told us it was probably self-harm by overdose. A tragic overdose by a troubled star who couldn't handle fame. But here's what they didn't tell you. The forensic evidence doesn't match. The timeline has massive holes. Marilyn Monroe's life and tragic end have been whispered about for decades. So many believed they already knew her story, her stardom, her beauty, and the sorrow behind the spotlight. But now, a new discovery has surfaced, one that shakes the foundation of everything we thought we understood. From vanished letters to discreet conversations in the White House, this revelation paints a troubling picture, even as it finally brings the mystery into focus. This isn't just another Hollywood tale. It's the missing piece we've been waiting for. What really happened that night isn't just darker than we thought. It involves the most powerful men in America, a cover-up that reached the highest levels of government. So what does this new clue uncover? Stay with us in this video to find out. Norma Jean, born into nightmare. June 1st, 1926. Los Angeles County Hospital. A baby girl enters the world with everything stacked against her. Her mother, Gladys, was a paranoid schizophrenic who would spend most of her life institutionalized. Her father, unknown, possibly a figment of her mother's delusions about Clark Gable. From her very first breath, Norma Jean Mortensen was unwanted. By the time she was 7 years old, she'd been shuffled between 11 different foster homes. Think about that for a second. 11 homes before most kids finish first grade. At just 8, she was subjected to deeply inappropriate behavior from a family friend while living in a foster home, she told the adults. No one believed her. At 11, it happened again. And this is where the pattern starts, the pattern that would eventually get her killed. Norma Jean learned early that her body wasn't her own, that men took what they wanted, that no one would protect her. The orphanages were worse. She was told repeatedly that she was unwanted, that no one would ever love her, that she was damaged goods. Can you imagine hearing that as a child? Those words don't just hurt, they rewire your brain. They teach you that your only value is in what others can take from you. At 16, facing the prospect of returning to another orphanage, Norma Jean married a man named James Dougherty. Not because she loved him, but because it was survival. Marriage or the orphanage? Those were her options. When he joined the Merchant Marines and left, she found work in a factory. And that's where everything changed. A photographer spotted her. He saw what every man would see, a beautiful face that could sell anything. She bleached her hair, changed her name, and transformed herself into Marilyn Monroe. But here's what most people miss. This wasn't empowerment. This was a traumatized girl learning that her looks were the only currency she had. And powerful men were already lining up to exploit that. Hollywood's perfect victim. 1946. 20th Century Fox signs Marilyn to a contract. And the studio executives took one look at her and saw exactly what they wanted. Beautiful, desperate, traumatized, and willing to do anything to avoid going back to poverty. She was perfect. Not for stardom, for exploitation. The casting couch wasn't a metaphor in 1940s Hollywood, it was a requirement. Marilyn was forced to sleep with executives for small roles, for screen tests, for the privilege of maybe becoming something. And every time she did it, she died a little more inside. They changed her name, erasing Norma Jean completely. They crafted a persona, the dumb blonde with the breathy voice and the wiggling walk. They needed her stupid because smart women weren't attractive. Smart women were threatening. But here's what they didn't advertise. Marilyn Monroe had an IQ estimated over 165. She read Dostoevsky and Freud. She studied at the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg, one of the greatest acting teachers in history. She was brilliant, but the more she played dumb, the more people believed it. Her intelligence became her secret shame, something she had to hide to keep working. The trap was perfect: play the role or lose everything. And then came the pills. Studio doctors prescribed what they called vitamins, amphetamines to keep her thin and energetic for 18-hour shoots, barbiturates to knock her out after the amphetamines made sleep impossible. This was the beginning of the addiction that would be used to kill her. The studios controlled everything. They gave the pills, they took them away, and she became dependent on them, on the system, on the image they'd created. In 1954, she married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio. He wanted a housewife. When they filmed the famous subway grate scene for The 7-Year Itch, Joe stood in the crowd and watched men leer at his wife. That night, there was violence. Multiple sources confirm it. The marriage lasted 9 months, but here's the strange part. Joe never stopped loving her, never remarried. After her death, he sent roses to her grave every week for 20 years. Which raises an interesting question. Did Joe know something about how she really died? Then came Arthur Miller, the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright. Marilyn thought, finally, someone who'll value my mind, not just my body. But Miller used her for material, writing cruelly about her in his work. She discovered his diary one day and read that he was disappointed in her, that she wasn't who he thought she'd be. Even the intellectual found her worthless. She had multiple miscarriages during their marriage, her body failing her again. By 1961, they were divorced, and Marilyn was more alone than she'd ever been. But she hadn't met the men who would kill her yet. Because in 1961, at a party in Malibu, Marilyn Monroe was introduced to the President of the United States, and this meeting would sign her death warrant. The President's plaything, February 1962, Peter Lawford's beach house in Malibu. Lawford was a Hollywood actor, but more importantly, he was John F. Kennedy's brother-in-law, and his real job was procuring women for the president. That night, he introduced Marilyn to JFK. She was starstruck. The President of the United States wanted her. Kennedy saw something else entirely. A beautiful, famous woman with serious psychological damage. Perfect for a discreet affair. The Secret Service arranged the meetings, hotel rendezvous, quick visits to Lawford's house when Jackie was out of town. But this is what Marilyn didn't understand. For JFK, this was transactional. Quick encounters, no emotion, then back to running the country. For Marilyn, it was romance. She started telling friends she was in love, that he was going to leave Jackie, that she'd become First Lady. Can you imagine how delusional that sounds? But that's what trauma does. It makes you believe that this time, someone will choose you. This time, you'll be enough. May 19th, 1962. Madison Square Garden, 15,000 people watching. Marilyn walks on stage in a flesh-colored dress, so tight she had to be sewn into it. She sings "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" in that breathy, seductive voice. Jackie Kennedy refused to attend because she knew what was happening. And this is the moment everything changes, because now it's public. J. Edgar Hoover is watching. The FBI file on Marilyn grows thicker, and Kennedy realizes he has a problem. Late May 1962, JFK cuts her off. Phone calls to the White House get blocked. Peter Lawford delivers the message. It's over. Forget it happened. Marilyn is devastated. But more than that, she's angry. Because during those intimate moments, JFK talked about Cuba, about the Bay of Pigs, about CIA operations, about the mafia connections. Pillow talk from the President of the United States to a woman everyone thought was too dumb to matter. And now she's hurt and angry and starting to talk to friends about what she knows. But JFK wasn't the only Kennedy brother. And the next one was far more dangerous. He was there to make sure Marilyn stayed quiet. And when he failed at that, well, that's when things got fatal. The Attorney General's fatal mistake. Robert F. Kennedy, the Attorney General, JFK's younger brother and protector. His job was to eliminate threats to the presidency. Summer of 1962, he's sent to handle the Marilyn situation. Calm her down. Make sure she stops calling the White House. But something unexpected happens. Bobby actually talks to her. Unlike Jack, who just wanted her body, Bobby engages her mind. They discuss his crusade against organized crime, his war on corruption. Marilyn is fascinated, and Bobby makes a fatal error. He starts an affair with her too. Here's where it gets really dangerous. Marilyn keeps a red diary. Multiple witnesses confirm this. In it, she writes notes from conversations with both Kennedy brothers, details about Cuba, CIA operations, the Bay of Pigs failure. She writes that Bobby promised to divorce his wife Ethel for her. Another delusion. Another man making false promises. But this diary is the smoking gun, and it will disappear the night she dies. July 1962. Marilyn's behavior becomes erratic. She's fired from her film for chronic absences. She's calling the White House so often it's embarrassing. She tells friends she's going to hold a press conference, reveal the truth about the Kennedys, show her diary to reporters. And here's the critical part. The FBI has her phones tapped. They're listening to everything. They hear her making these threats. They know exactly how dangerous she's become. August 3rd and 4th, 1962. That final weekend, Bobby Kennedy is in Los Angeles. The official story claims he wasn't there, but multiple witnesses place him at Lawford's house. Helicopter records show trips to LA. A neighbor sees him arguing with Marilyn at her home. She's demanding he keep his promises. He realizes she's out of control, that she knows too much. Saturday afternoon, Bobby leaves, angry, scared, and somewhere a decision is made. August 4th, 1962, the last day of Marilyn Monroe's life. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, is present all day. Later investigation reveals she had intelligence connections. Dr. Ralph Greenson, her psychiatrist, visits multiple times. He also has documented CIA ties. Phone records show calls to the Justice Department. Peter Lawford calls around 9 p.m. Marilyn sounds drugged, slurring. She says something chilling. Say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to Jack, and say goodbye to yourself, because you're a nice guy. Lawford claims he was worried, but he did nothing. And then, sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight, something happened in that bedroom, something that wasn't self-harmed by overdose. And before her body was even cold, the cover-up had already begun. What really happened? Here's the official story. Housekeeper Eunice Murray wakes up at 3:30 a.m. and sees a light under Marilyn's door. She calls Dr. Greenson. He breaks a window, finds Marilyn dead, face down, naked, phone in hand. They call Dr. Engelberg, and then, mysteriously, they wait nearly an hour before calling the police. They don't call until 4:25 a.m. Why the delay? What were they doing for that hour? Police find an empty bottle of Nembutal beside the bed. Ruled probable self-harm within days. Suspiciously fast for the most famous woman in the world. But let's look at the forensic evidence, because this is where the official story completely falls apart. The autopsy was performed by Dr. Thomas Noguchi, and Noguchi found something impossible to explain. There were no pills in Marilyn's stomach. None. No residue. No capsule traces. You cannot swallow 40 pills and have a completely empty stomach. It's physically impossible. The barbiturates were in her blood and liver at fatal concentrations. But they didn't get there through her mouth. Noguchi also noted bruising inconsistent with self-harm. The lividity patterns indicated her body had been moved. There was no water glass in the room. How did she swallow all those pills? The phone in her hand, but records show her last call was at 10 p.m. If she died after that, who was she calling? In 2016, unsealed documents revealed something shocking. Deputy D.A. John Miner had interviewed Dr. Greenson off the record. Greenson told him Marilyn's medication was administered via enema, not orally, rectally. This explains the empty stomach. This explains the blood concentration. And here's what's critical. That is not a self-harm method. That is how someone else administered a fatal dose to an unconscious victim. Multiple witnesses reported shouting from her house around midnight. A neighbor saw an ambulance arrive before police were called. An ambulance driver later claimed Marilyn was still alive when they arrived, that she died en route to the hospital and was brought back to the house, that the scene was staged. When police arrived, the scene was contaminated. Murray was doing laundry at 4 a.m., destroying evidence. The red diary vanished. Phone records were subpoenaed, but pages were removed. The FBI file remains partially classified 60 years later. Why? Everyone involved is dead. Bobby Kennedy was documented in San Francisco that night, an alibi created after the fact. But the helicopter records, the witnesses, the neighbor who saw his car, they all tell a different story. The witnesses who died. You want to know how deep this goes? Look at what happened to everyone who knew too much. Peter Lawford, the Kennedy brother-in-law who arranged everything. After Marilyn's death, he spiraled into alcoholism. His career destroyed. He told multiple people, "I know what happened that night." In 1984, on his deathbed, he confessed to his third wife. He admitted Bobby Kennedy was there, that he helped with the cover-up. He died before giving full testimony. His ashes were scattered at sea. No grave. How convenient. Sam Giancana, Chicago mob boss who shared a mistress with JFK. He hated Bobby Kennedy because RFK was prosecuting him. He had every motive to embarrass the Kennedys. Some theories suggest the mafia killed Marilyn to frame Bobby. In 1975, Giancana was scheduled to testify before a Senate committee about CIA and mob connections. The night before his testimony, he was shot 7 times in his own home. The killer was never found. The message was clear. Talk and you die. Dorothy Kilgallen, famous journalist and TV personality. In 1964, she claimed to have interviewed Jack Ruby, the man who killed Lee Harvey Oswald. She told friends she was going to break the Kennedy case wide open. She had information connecting Marilyn's death to JFK's assassination. November 8, 1965, she was found dead in her home. Overdose. The same pills that killed Marilyn. Her notes and files on the Kennedy case had vanished. Another witness silenced. Bernard Spindel, professional wiretapper who'd bugged Marilyn's house. He had tapes of conversations with the Kennedys. He had recordings from the night Marilyn died. In 1966, his home was raided by authorities. The tapes were seized. Spindel told his lawyer the tapes proved it wasn't self-harm. He died before he could testify. The tapes were never released. They're out there somewhere. Someone has them. And they contain evidence. The truth. Based on the evidence, here's the most probable scenario. August 4th, afternoon. Bobby Kennedy confronts Marilyn at her home. He realizes she won't stay quiet. She's threatening everything. His career, his brother's legacy, national security. A decision is made. She's too dangerous. She knows too much. But it's not Kennedy himself who does it. That's not how these things work. Dr. Greenson and Eunice Murray, both with intelligence connections, are already in place. That evening, Greenson visits and gives Marilyn what he tells her is a sedative injection. She becomes unconscious. Then the fatal dose is administered rectally. This explains the empty stomach. This explains the high blood concentration. This explains why there was no struggle. The body is positioned in bed, the phone placed in her hand, the empty pill bottle on the nightstand. They wait to call police, establishing a timeline that puts Bobby Kennedy far away. His San Francisco alibi is created. The scene is staged as self-harm. When the first ambulance arrives and she's somehow still alive, they send it away. Then they call police after the cleanup is complete. The red diary is removed, phone records are altered, and the official story is set in stone. Why wasn't it self-harm? Marilyn had just been rehired by Fox. She'd signed a new contract days before her death. She was planning projects, making appointments. If she'd wanted to kill herself, there would have been a note. She was too expressive to leave nothing. The forensic evidence is impossible to reconcile with self-harm. Too many witnesses died mysteriously. Too many records were destroyed. Too many files remain classified. The real tragedy is that Marilyn was brilliant, damaged, and used from the moment she entered Hollywood. She was created by a system that commodified her body and destroyed by a system that feared her voice. She never had the chance to become who she could have been.